So welcome, this is Volkswagen Golf Mark 4 2003, and we're gonna be reviewing this car in the city roads, also highway roads, and we'll see if this small car with 1.4 liter engine has enough ability to move freely. Well, as you can see, the color is quite unique, gold Golf, and at the same time you can see that we have relatively small tires, 195s. This can add to the fun part. This interior is pretty decent, the quality is not really that bad. There are some parts of the car that feel relatively good. This is hard plastic, slightly soft maybe. This is also relatively hard, but the gearbox itself feels good. The steering wheel, it feels much softer than you would see in many budget cars. The seats itself seem quite comfortable. I mean, they are definitely nothing fancy, but this car was never about being fancy. It was more about being practical and at the same time providing some luxury. It did not have to be lots of luxury, but there had to be some kind of practicality combined with comfort. It's basically my first time driving on Autobahn alone, so everything that I'll do will be slightly more cautious than I would do in my home country. Well, we are already on the Autobahn and we only have a 1.4 liter engine, so let's see how well can this car drive on these conditions. Fifth gear. The gearbox itself seems to be pretty decent. The gears are easy to find. It has sometimes a problem to put in the first gear, but other than that, it's not really that hard to drive. So, as someone who is not German, to me it's really hard to comprehend that at certain points of the Autobahn there is actually no speed limit. I mean, with this car we probably do not have the ability to go super fast, but still to not be looking at your speedometer and just be free in that regard, that feels really good. How does it feel? Well, we are going approximately 100 kph, and I have to say it feels relatively loud compared to other modern cars, but it's really nothing that annoying. And I think the speed itself, it seems to be decent. It's definitely nothing exceptional in terms of acceleration, and as we can see, the car at this speed is probably not very fuel efficient, since the engine RPMs are relatively high, already about 3000. So if I now push harder and harder, the car will consume more. Now we will try to accelerate to at least 120. Yeah, it's doing its job relatively easy. I mean, it takes some time, but considering that we only have 75 horsepower and about 130 newton meters of torque. Yeah, the car is light. It only weighs about 1050 kilograms, but still the horsepower is not really that much. We are getting overtaken, but and you can also feel the wind. It makes cars slightly unstable or upset at higher speeds. So I would not really be super comfortable to be driving this car super fast, but 120, it feels decent. And I will also try to maybe go a bit faster. Well, I mean, it's going, but it's, as you can see, it is relatively slow, even though I'm basically flooring and the car does not really allow going this fast, but it's doable. Not very enjoyable in the sense that, I mean, this is also an uphill, and then you're always worrying that maybe there are cars faster that are coming and you don't really have that much power. Can I do this? Can I overtake this car relatively fast or not? You know, you always have that in your mind. We are now taking a corner. It's decent. I mean, the handling is okay-ish. It's not really exceptional. Let's get it in the second gear because we might need it for our acceleration. Oh, okay, now there is no acceleration anymore. We are in a so-called Landstrasse, which means now there will be speed limits here. Here I think the car feels much better in a way that it is so much nicer to drive. The stability here feels so much better compared to the Autobahn, where it's not really that comfortable, but it shows that even with 75 horsepower you can still go fast, you can still overtake cars. It's gonna do the job. I mean, if you have an experience driving some cars that are more suitable for Autobahns, you will realize that it's not as good, but it's doing it. Acceleration takes about 13 seconds, which is a lot. It's probably one of the slowest cars I have ever driven, but because you have a manual gearbox and relatively small thin tires, and the car that simply does not weigh that much, it gives you the ability to have fun. When you're driving on such a nice roads, well, you just enjoy the car even though it might not be the fastest and coolest one. The reliability is not really that bad. It does tend to eat oil, and this engine is also not an exception, but otherwise it's not that bad in terms of reliability. The problem is that even if you go from 1.4 liter to 1.6 liter engine, the difference is already huge. You basically lose 2-3 seconds of acceleration, and that is a huge difference. But if you're gonna see a Golf 4 that is relatively well maintained, then you might still think about buying these cars because they are just not that bad. Well, you really need to use every gear very smart because you just do not have that much power, but it's still doable if you know how to maybe use all of the gears, and you have to also calculate the distance much more precisely, because once you start overtaking, even if you are in a second gear, it just does not have that much power. And we have a little curve which we can take. Yeah, again, now it's again 80. Well, this is kinda my first test drive in Germany, or it's actually my first test drive in Germany, and at the same time I'm kinda driving in this city first time, and also I'm driving on Autobahn first time, so this is just very unique experience for me also, but I'm enjoying it, that's for sure. Another interesting fact about Golf 4 generation is that they do not really tend to rust that much, and that's quite positive. Nice. There is a biker or a cyclist, and yeah, you have to be always very careful with them. You can overtake them, but not if you do not have that much space, which in this case we kinda have. Third gear, going, and we are already kinda in the city again, so, or we are not. We are actually not. Yeah, this is what I like. Quite stable. The steering is like, you can feel some stuff. The car feels kinda light on its feet. I would like if it was slightly more planted. The tires are okay. Okay, getting overtaken. Let's see the handling once again. Yeah, it's decent. 4 degrees, okay, that's gas, gas, gas. Nice.